On This Week in Iowa, the vice president is talking trade in Des Moines. Then why is Congressman John Delaney running so early for president? Plus a conversation with Tom Steyer, the billionaire with political ads, and we break down the new makeup of the Iowa Supreme Court. Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us here on This Week in Iowa. I'm Sabrina Ahmed. The new EPA administrator made his first visit to Iowa Monday, stopping by the fairgrounds. That's something his predecessor never did. Andrew Wheeler joined Governor Kim Reynolds, Congressman David Young, and Ag Secretary Mike Naig in a roundtable with farmers. That portion wasn't open to the media, but afterwards, Wheeler shared his optimism about the future of the renewable fuel standard.
The RFS is a very important program, not just for the state of Iowa, but for the entire country. We want to provide more certainty for example, the RVOs. So far this administration, we've been on time on our RVOs each year. That provides more certainty to the biofuels producers.
Wheeler says he's also working on a plan that clarifies what waters are good for farmers to use. He says that'll eliminate some of the legal uncertainty surrounding the issue. Another familiar face in the state was at the state fair this year, former Republican House Speaker John Boehner. He was seen taking in the soapbox speakers Friday last week. When I spotted him, I stopped him and asked him why he was here. He told me he was just passing through Iowa on his way to Nebraska.
Driving through town, had dinner with Latham and his family last night. Had some time this morning, thought I'd stop by the fair. I thought I'd go over to see what Delaney was saying.
When I asked him if his visit was political to the fair, he said, no, I don't do much politics anymore. Congressman John Delaney, who we'll hear from in just a bit, is who Boehner was referring to in that interview, who was actually speaking at the soapbox. Delaney did spot Speaker Boehner in the crowd, and that made for a pretty fun exchange of two former colleagues. Vice President Mike Pence was in Des Moines this week. He championed the Trump administration's progress over the last year and a half. He also praised the work of Iowa Congressmen David Young and Steve King, both in the audience at the Des Moines event. Pence addressed the trade war that's been brewing between the Trump administration and other countries. He told the crowd that the president has Iowa producers' best interest in mind.
Let me make you a promise. Our administration will not back down. We will stand with American farmers 100%.
Pence said that he hears from Governor Kim Reynolds all the time about trade policies, and he says he and the governor are fighting for American farmers, and he's promising Iowa farmers that they will get out ahead of this. Well, the state Supreme Court struck down parts of the new voter ID law that took effect last year. This week, our team at This Week in Iowa found out that ruling will not impact the average Iowan come Election Day in November. Last week, justices on the state Supreme Court affirmed an injunction on parts of the state voter ID law. That means that county auditors do not need to compare signatures on absentee requests and ballots. It also means that you don't need to submit a voter ID number on your absentee ballot. Remember, if you do not have some sort of ID when you vote in the midterms this year, that's okay. You just need to sign an oath to say you are who you say you are. Let's take a quick break. Coming up next, you've seen his face on your TV, and now we speak to Congressman and presidential candidate John Delaney at the Iowa State Fair. His big message to Iowans.
Accuracy means tracking the story. We do a good job of breaking it down and showing people what they can expect. It is so important to not only let you know what's happening at the moment, but to track out what's going to happen in the future. When exactly, at what time is it going to reach your neighborhood with every impact from hail to damaging winds and, of course, tornadoes. We give the information that's needed and we give it accurately. And I think people really appreciate that.
We are Iowa and it's everything to me.
It's barbecue season, so it's time for Local 5's Backyard Barbecue. Chief Meteorologist Brad Edwards could be serving up delicious dinner, and we are Iowa's most accurate forecast from your backyard.
Oh, the food's stupendous. Plus, having my favorite news crew out here. So, everything was perfect.
Sign up to win a backyard barbecue from Local 5 at weareiowa.com. Barbecues are sponsored by Fairway Countryside Barbecue Sauce and Capital Landscaping. One grand prize winner will receive a backyard landscape installation, so sign up today.
us every Sunday at 10 on Local 5 for the Iowa Realty Sunday Home Show, featuring new construction neighborhoods around the metro by the best builders in the market. We chat with builders and Iowa Realty professionals about open house, trends in the industry, financing information, and existing inventory. And our special Great Iowa Home feature each week showcases a luxury home listed by Iowa Realty. Now in our 34th year at 10 a.m. Sunday on Local 5 or at iowarealty.com.
From the capital city, you're watching This Week in Iowa with Sabrina Ahmed, getting to the heart of what's happening in Iowa politics.
Welcome back. Congressman John Delaney is already running for president in 2020. So what better place to campaign than the Iowa State Fair? When he was here, I chatted with him about why he's running so early. Take a listen.
My message to Iowans is very simple, and it's the same message everywhere, which is what I'm running for president on is to bring this country together, take this terribly fractured nation, and create a coalition that can win and govern. Right, because both of those things are important. If we get Democrats, independents, and disaffected Republicans together, we have a coalition that can win every election, and then we can govern and we can start doing the things we really need to do that we can't wait any longer to do. Things like universal health care, building infrastructure, fixing our broken immigration system, things that there's actually huge support for among the coalition I'm talking about. We've just allowed the extremes in the party to hold the country hostage, and it's time for that to end.
Those, of course, are very big talker points across the country. Here in Iowa, Iowans are very concerned about agriculture, about tariffs, about how much money they're going to be able to bring home to feed their family, about being able to feed their family. Talk to us about how you can help Iowans do those things.
Well, you know, so trade is a big issue here in Iowa because of agriculture, and I think what's going on with trade right now is terrible. I mean, it's bad policy. It's not actually responsive to the problems we have trade-wise. We do have issues with China, but they're actually very different issues. They're around intellectual property. So engaging in an old-fashioned trade war, slapping tariffs on them, having them slap tariffs on us, what that really means is he's using Iowa farmers as a pawn in a larger game of chess that he doesn't even understand what he's playing. Right, and that's really hurting Iowa farmers. So my trade policy, I was a supporter of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I was one of the few Democrats to support that because I thought it was good for us economically and it was good for us geopolitically, but it was particularly good for the agricultural industry. One of the great supporters of that was Governor Vilsack when he was Secretary of Agriculture of the Obama administration. He did a great job. So that's one of the things, but I'm also focused on bringing investment to rural communities, communities that have been left behind. I have a whole agenda to encourage public investment, to encourage private investment, and actually to encourage companies to locate in these places. So my agenda for Iowa that works is a stable trade policy where markets are open and Iowa farmers can sell their goods, and you combine that with kind of a rural strategy to encourage infrastructure investment, private investment, and jobs to locate there. That's my Iowa strategy.
So you got into the game very early.
Yes.
This is even early for Iowa State Fair terms. So talk to us about what made you decide to do that.
Well, I think we're at a point, at least I am, and I think a lot of Americans are, where it's not too early to talk about 2020. Right, what's going on in the White House in terms of degrading the norms of our society and putting us in a very risky position globally, I think it's time to talk about now how we're going to turn the page and how we're going to use the Trump presidency as a punctuation of decades of broken politics in this country. And then with that punctuation, those decades are going to end, and we're going to start a new chapter where we get back to the way we used to be, which doesn't mean we agree with each other on everything, but that we find common ground when we need to, and we get real things done, and we conduct ourselves with dignity and respect.
There are still a lot of Iowans who strongly support President Trump.
And listen, I understand why many of them do, because they feel like their government's left them behind, and they felt like he was going to come to Washington and actually be a different type of leader. And I think there were some people who were saying to ourselves, you know, maybe when he gets here, he'll be a bipartisan lead kind of from the middle in a common sense way. But he didn't do that, right? He didn't do that. I mean, he played right into the special interests that have been controlling Washington for too long, and he doesn't really have a plan. And I think what I would say to supporters of them, particularly in rural Iowa who are tied to the agricultural industry, is, you know, this is an example when you have someone who doesn't have any experience. Look what he's doing with trade. We should never elect a president of the United States who has never served in government in our country. That doesn't mean we should only elect people with government experience. I'm an entrepreneur. I started 2 businesses from scratch. I was the youngest CEO in the New York Stock Exchange. But we also need people with some experience who understand the world. And so that's what I would tell Iowa. And I would also say, listen, what I'm running on, you should like what I'm talking about. I'm talking about economic growth. I'm talking about bringing jobs to rural Iowa. I'm talking about a stable trade policy. I'm talking about untearing the TPP so that we have more markets for you to bring your products. I'm talking about actually getting things done, because most Iowans just get up every day really early, they work hard, and they get things done. And they'd like their government to do the same.
How do you think you're being received so far here in Iowa?
I think very well. Now, I'm not particularly objective on this topic, but every time we go to an event, we get volunteers. They put our T-shirts on, and they show up at another event, and they're coming in, they're making calls, they're doing stuff for us. So we're starting a movement here in Iowa around this message.
Let's take a quick break. Coming up next, billionaire and activist Tom Steyer also stopped by the fair. Hear his Impeach Trump petition coming up next.
Over $1 billion for injured clients. $1 billion. Why call anyone else? Call Cupie and Abraham right now.
Alexa, give me my Local 5 news headlines.
I'm Local 5's Sabrina Ahmed with today's top stories. Set up your flash briefings by adding the We Are Iowa skills to your Alexa app.
You'll hear Local 5's top news stories updated 4 times a day.
And plan your day with We Are Iowa's most accurate weather team, as I tell you if you need this or these.
Go to weareiowa.com/Alexa for easy setup instructions.
Alexa, tell me We Are Iowa's most accurate forecast.
I'm Local 5 meteorologist Taylor Canoes.
Season 2 is coming.
Who's ready to be the next American
From big cities to small towns, come out to audition and live out your dream.
You're going to
Hollywood. The skills you develop as a soldier in the Army National Guard can give you a head start on your career. Gain practical experience with technology and equipment that will give you a leg up in the civilian world. Learn critical leadership skills and to be part of a team. Serve your community and your country part-time while earning money for an education. Visit NationalGuard.com to learn about the paid training and career opportunities available to you in the Army National Guard.
Accuracy means tracking the storm. We do a good job of breaking it down and showing people what they can expect. It is so important to not only let you know what's happening at the moment, but to track out what's going to happen in the future. When exactly, at what time is it going to reach your neighborhood with every impact from hail to damaging winds and, of course, tornadoes. We give the information that's needed and we give it accurately. And I think people really appreciate that.
We are Iowa and it's everything to me.
You're watching This Week in Iowa, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Iowa.
Billionaire Tom Steyer is a familiar face to many of you because of the ads you've likely seen on your TV calling for the impeachment of President Trump. He has a petition with hundreds of thousands of signatures. But long before he began that petition, he started an effort in Iowa to get young people involved in politics. He's actually been in this state for 6 years, also across the country. Take a listen.
Our organization is a grassroots organization, and what we're trying to do is promote broader democracy in America. This year in 2018, we're specifically running the largest youth voter mobilization program in American history. So what that means is people under 35 are the largest age cohort in America, bigger than the boomers, and they vote at half the rate of other Americans. So what we've been trying to do for the last year is to go to them directly, the way we are on 29 campuses here in Iowa, but also in social media, also sending them mail, also knocking on doors, to encourage them to think about how important their participation in the democracy is.
So you're asking them to vote people in who would then impeach Trump?
No, actually, those are two separate things.
Okay.
We're asking them to vote.
Right.
And what we're doing really is asking them, what do you care about? What are the things that you care most about? And then encouraging conversations about that so they realize, wow, there's a lot at stake here. We need to vote. The Impeach Trump petition has been an effort by us to get Americans of all ages across the board to sign a petition saying we have a dangerous, reckless, and lawless president. For the sake of our democracy and the safety and health of the American people, we need to get him out. And we have over 5.5 million people who've signed that and who agree with us. And if you do polling, you'd see over 40% of Americans agree with us, the same level that existed before Richard Nixon was removed from office.
But if you put your face on these TV ads to impeach Trump and then you're also trying to get out voter movement, wouldn't some person maybe correlate the two?
I think what I hope they see, which is the truth, is that what we're trying to do is two very simple things. We view the impeachment movement as a pure exercise of patriotism. Regardless of your political party, you should be putting the country and the safety of our democracy ahead of your party. And so we view that as a purely patriotic act. And the other thing that we truly believe in, that we've been working for, is returning power to the people of the United States. And so everything we're doing is along those lines. We believe that there's been a hostile corporate takeover of our democracy, and that the people are being overlooked, their needs are not being met, and no one's even telling them the truth. So what we're trying to do is both do our patriotic duty of standing up for the country and convince as many people to participate in our democracy, because we have the power of the people, and if we show up, we can win over the power of money.
So you're focusing on 2018 right now. What are you hoping to accomplish in this election cycle?
What we'd really like to see is we'd like to see more progressive candidates who are dealing more with the needs, rights, and dignity of individual Americans win. Because I think the vast majority of Americans of both political parties know that this political system has been taken over by rich corporate interests. So we are pushing as hard as possible to get candidates into office who will actually listen to the people, talk truth to the people, and then push hard for the rights of individuals and support them in their lives.
So what do you tell the many Iowans who still very strongly support President Trump?
What I say is this: I understand how upset Americans of every political stripe are. I understand that they feel as if they're being ignored, that they're not being represented, and in fact their interests are being subverted. And a lot of them have turned to Mr. Trump as an anti-establishment candidate. The problem with Mr. Trump is, A, he's reckless and lawless and breaks the law all the time, and that's a huge problem. But secondly, his solutions are worse than the problems that they're trying to address. So if you actually look at him, he claims to be representing working people, but he is systematically going after the rights of unions to organize. He is systematically going after the political power of working people. And in fact, at a time when we have full employment, we have seen the actual buying power of an average wage go down. Even though wages are going up, the increase is more than eaten up by the increase in healthcare costs that are going crazy, and the cost of education, which is a huge burden on our young people. So in fact, Mr. Trump is talking about real problems, but his solutions are terrible, and they're also hateful.
Personal plans for 2020?
We're talking all about what's going to happen over the next 84 days until Election Day on November 6th. None of us knows what's going to happen that day, and the pollsters have been wrong about every single election. I got up today in front of Iowans at the fair and said, I am committed to working full-time for justice on November 7th, the day after the election. But until we find out what happens on November 6th, I don't know what is the most positive, impactful thing I can do to have the United States be the kind of optimistic and just place we've always been, and to have that kind of optimism push us forward. And so I don't know the right answer because the facts aren't all in.
Steyer and his daughter perused the fair after our interview. He was most excited to see the livestock. We switch gears and talk about the Iowa Supreme Court right after this, so stick with us.
From the farm towns to the downtown to the suburbs, a common feeling lives inside of you and me. And no matter where we go, Central Iowa's in our souls, and it's what keeps us connected to this place. And I love it, living local. It's the only kind of beer I want to breathe. We are Iowa, and it's everything to me.
Selfless service is the principle that guides Army National Guard soldiers to be ready whenever disaster strikes. They have a stake in the well-being of the neighborhoods where they live and work. They train part-time to be ready to serve at all times. Selfless service. It's what inspires the men and women of the Army National Guard to be part of something greater than themselves. Visit NationalGuard.com to learn more.
She's 21.
Your daughter is hooking.
Don't knock it till you try it.
A young mom.
You said your son means everything to you. Why is your mother raising your son instead of you?
With no place to call home.
It doesn't bother you that you are with a bunch of weirdos?
You bother me.
She never showed up until Ivy started having money.
That is so funny.
You are such a hood rat.
Okay, I'll be a hood rat and you're a horrible mom.
Next, Dr. Phil.
Monday at 4 on Local 5.
This station seeks groups that regularly send information about work opportunities to job applicants or that have applicants to refer. If your group would like to receive notification of job vacancies at our station, contact us by U.S. mail, email, or by calling 457-9645. Individuals interested in employment in the broadcast industry are encouraged to visit weareiowa.com for a list of current job openings. Nexstar Broadcasting Companies are an equal opportunity employer.
Welcome back. We are finishing off our show by talking about the newest addition to the Iowa Supreme Court. And to have that conversation, we're joined by Rox Laird, an expert and blogger on the Supreme Court. Rox, welcome back to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So the biggest headline about this new Supreme Court addition is that this justice, after confirmed, will be the only female on the court. Right. Her name is Susie Christensen. What does her appointment say to you?
Well, I think it's going to provide a certain amount of relief for the rest of the justices, frankly, because I think they felt a certain amount of discomfort with the idea that it was an all-male court. And so, and I know Chief Justice Cady has talked about that. So, and I think they had to go out of their way in some of their opinions to explain, you know, why they did things from the perspective that they did. So I think it'll give them some relief, frankly, to have a woman on the court to provide some more diversity.
Iowa was the only state in the country that didn't have a female on their state Supreme Court. Why? How did that happen? And well, I mean, I know with Marsha Ternus when she was voted out after the retention votes, but... Right.
Well, a lot of there's no way you can really control that. There have been 2 women justices on the court, Linda Newman back in the 80s and 90s, and then after that Marsha Ternus through 2010, as you say. But the way Iowa works, you have to accept the people who turn in applications for the job, and then there are the nominations that are given to the governor. So there's a lot of steps along the way, and it's not just the governor saying, I want to put a woman on the court.
So what do we know about Susan Christensen? What kind of judge do you think she'll be?
Well, I think she will probably be much like in the mode of the justice that she's replacing, Bruce Zager. He is a former trial judge, and she is a trial judge, and they probably handled many of the same types of cases, and so she'll have that perspective of the trial court. Beyond that, it's going to be hard to say, you know, what her perspective is going to be.
Do we know what kind of vote she might be? Obviously appointed by a Republican governor, but will she be a swing vote? What's the current makeup, and what will the makeup, do you believe, be after this appointment?
Well, it's, again, as I say, it's hard to predict how somebody's going to vote on issues, because the types of issues that she has dealt with in the district court are dictated by Supreme Court precedent. So she's not going to be, she was not able to go beyond what they said. So I think it's anybody's guess. That said, we have a court that is pretty evenly divided, 3 justices who would be more toward the liberal, and 3 justices, that includes Zager, who are on the more conservative side, and Chief Justice Cady has provided kind of that swing vote. So it's going to take a while for her to kind of get her sea legs and figure out. We may not know for quite a while.
So talk to me about some of the cases that she's worked on in district court. Are there any that really stand out that say, you know, this proved that she is going to be capable of being a Supreme Court justice, that her mind works that way?
Well, I did not read her decisions. I read all of her application and watched her interview, and she's like any other district court judge in Iowa. I mean, they have very little amount of staff. They get a lot of difficult cases. They have to move fast. It's a tough job. And so they get the broad spectrum of cases, and she'll bring that perspective to the court.
With Susan Christensen on the board, on the court, that makeup of court will likely have to rule on the governor's controversial fetal heartbeat law.
It very likely will, right.
Will having her on the court make a difference?
It could, although, you know, in the last term, the court ruled on an abortion case, the 72-hour wait, and Justice Zager voted with the majority to strike down that law. So, you know, it was a 4-2 decision, and it was surprising, quite honestly, that Zager went with the liberal wing on that one. And so it's hard to say, again, what she's going to do, but the court can't be pigeonholed on any particular issue.
Rox Laird, thank you very much.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Short break. We'll be right back.
A perfect life, unconditional love, your best friend with you forever. And there is a time to say, I love you. You don't have to hurt anymore. Loving Rest transports your pet professionally in zippered transport bags. Loving Rest has all human cremation equipment for your pet family member. Loving Rest has your pet returned in 48 hours or less. Loving Rest is local. We can respond to your pet afterlife needs quickly. Loving Rest. Ask for the best.
This station strives to provide quality children's television programming and endeavors to meet the children's television requirements set by the FCC and the Children's Television Act of 1990. We prepare a quarterly children's television report describing each program we broadcast. We invite the public to read this report during regular business hours and comment on the educational and informational needs of children in our community. Thank you.
You are respectful to women. What could we do to raise our boys to have those same values?
I think it boils down to respect. Women are not objects for men to pursue. We need to think about things in a new way.
Next, Terry, meet this incredible super kid.
You have the blood of a champion.
She's got the moves, but Harry's got the surprise.
Oh my God.
And the cutest competition on 4 legs, the Puppy Bowl.
I'm obsessed.
Join the club.
Monday at 3 on Local 5.
Selfless service is the principle that guides Army National Guard soldiers to be ready whenever disaster strikes. They have a stake in the well-being of the neighborhoods where they live and work. They train part-time to be ready to serve at all times. Selfless service. It's what inspires the men and women of the Army National Guard to be part of something greater than themselves. Visit NationalGuard.com to learn more.
Thank you so much for watching This Week in Iowa. You can catch all of our shows on our website, weareiowa.com. We hope to see you again next Sunday.